Okay, hello everybody. I want to address something that has been the overriding issue since for the past 10 years since that god awful escalator ride, and that is the toxic masculinity that's changed our nation's life, and it is not for the worse. I was inspired to do this by the iHip ladies, who I love their channel. They talk about current events and just things that annoy them in general, and they did touch on the toxic masculinity of this administration, and I thought, well, let's look into this a little bit more. So the card I have chosen that just came up is it's the Magician in reverse. This is about the Magician upright is about having the tools necessary to manifest what you want out of life. And I do have to admit that the orange one has been pretty good, but he hasn't been at that, but he hasn't done that in the most positive way. So this is actually the misuse of all of that. And I remember my one of my early tarot teachers who was teaching us about the Magician in reverse said, that's the person that hooks up with a really hot rock star, and for a very short amount of time, because that guy just isn't going to be around. He's not reliable. He could just be gone at any time now. And this is pretty much what this card is about. This is about, like that one night stand, and they make all these promises, and then poof, they disappear. Well, kind of spreading this out to the current event thing, it's that what he has done is he's used up he uses people, and then he tosses them to the wolves. And I would say one good example of that would be his former attorney, Michael Cohen. And there's a long list of contractors and all this stuff that goes back to the days of the New York real estate scam stuff. So I think what we need to do is, it seems as though this new masculinity taking away women's rights and other people that don't fall into the white Christian straight male thing are under fire. But it just didn't start with this election. This has been going on for 10 years, for about 10 years now, maybe before. And what I want to do in these readings is to take a look to see the underlying reasons about why this could have happened, because I really believe that this is a time to teach us, because I think in history this does go in cycles, just like fascism and all of that sort of thing. And well, that's part of fascism, actually. That's why all these things seem to go in cycles. So hopefully this one isn't going to last too long. But it's people having their rights eroded. And what I want to do is I want to see how this geared up again, and what we can, because if we know that, we can learn to avoid that in the future. So the first part is I'm going to talk about the origins of this, so we can see the signs to not repeat this again. So, okay, so time to pull this down. Okay, alrighty. So, where we are at now. Okay, the Fool. I'm going to say that with, and this goes to that Project 2025 and all that kind of stuff, that I think someone saw that the time was right, and that they were going to take the leap of faith. And I will put this with the Federalist Society, and they picked these people to do this because they thought they were pretty pliable, because they're just sort of like dumber less classy versions of themselves, I think, is how they would see it. So they decided to take a leap of faith and to put this in motion. But there's no guarantee they're going to land on the other cliff with this. So this is very interesting, I think. They thought this is the time to do it. I think sometime more than 10 years ago. Now we just need to find the clown that the peasants will go for to carry this out. So the energy is okay. So this goes along with them planning this out. But I'm going to say that right now, things are not quite working out as they had hoped it would. They had all their ducks in a row, but there's something that is not right with this plan. And I have to say, it's part of a public service announcement. All over the country tomorrow, there's going to be we're not having President's Day until we get a real president march. All over the country, I know here in Pittsburgh, it'll be at the Federal Building on Liberty Avenue near 10th Street, right near the Convention Center. I'm going to say if there is, the people are off of work tomorrow too. So I'm going to say that if there are a lot of people that show up for this, and I suspect that this will be sending a very, very loud message. So let's see the underlying things about this. Okay. This is about the tyrant, the toxic male tyrant. So, and I think this is all about power, and you just subjugate women, black people, whatever, LGBT. So they needed to find a tyrant. And so there comes Trump. But a tyrant that'll kind of appeal to the masses. That always eluded me, since the guy, he never worked a day in his life and was spoiled, trust fund brat, all. But apparently that's what they found. So they found that in him. And here we go. And they said, let's take a chance. Let's take a chance with him. And they did. And it pretty much worked. I have to say that. It pretty much worked. So looking on to what they can... Oh, yeah. In this way, this allows them to steal from us. Which I think, even though this is not a Pentacles, I'm going to say that this is pretty much... about steal. I mean, it's not only about stealing money, it's about stealing a way of life and the progress and the ideas that we have come up for. And this is the power end of it. But as the followers are turning away, I'm going to say this could come back to the energy of the Seven of Pentacles. It's like, this isn't quite how we thought that this was going to turn out. And it's the harvest of you reap what you sow. So, I'm glad to see that this early in the reading, it doesn't look like this is going to quite work out for them. Because I do have to say, it's all been very carefully. Okay. So, in opposition to this is the Death card in reverse. And, this is about a near-death experience, illnesses, all this sort of thing. So there's a lot going on in here. And it's also it's kind of the halting of the progression of the enlightened period that we're supposed to be heading for. And I would say that any setbacks they see now would be probably a near-death experience, but what they're missing is they're only avoiding the inevitable, which I think is going to be tremendous blowback from the people that they haven't been expecting. You can't be screwing over your constituents, and they may not turn up at the some of them will, but they may not turn up at these demonstrations tomorrow, but on the other hand, they won't be sending in their $5 if they're going to be paying. That's for half a carton of eggs for that. So at any rate, so let's see what we have in conscious thoughts. Okay. So this is kind of like the marriage card. I think in the conscious thoughts, it's always been about, well, we're going to marry up the people with this person that we can mold into a tyrant and show. And it's interesting because the male that shows the family with the male figure standing out quite dominant and the wife kind of looking up at him adoringly, saying, okay, if we can just take over the women again, then we get the power, we get the money, we get it all, and it's all going to blossom. So this is basically the plan. And it's also bringing back the myth of the 1950s nuclear family. And so that's and selling this as this BS to the public as this is such a wonderful thing to happen. So subconsciously, we have the Queen of Swords, and I'm going to tell you that in all these readings, and I know my other colleagues, these have been people like Kamala Harris, Letitia James, Fonnie Willis. Interesting, a lot of very strong women of color, especially because that only sticks it in a little bit more. It sticks the sword in a little bit more. That these, I'm going to sound very Freudian now, these guys are, it's sort of like that subconscious castration fear that they have with it, that woman she wields the sword. But it is a communication. And so these insecure people are, have this whole subconscious castration fear going on. And so I'm going to say out of that was born the Federalist Society. And I really believe that they take the intelligent women, but maybe not the brightest. People can be very intelligent enough to pass the bar exam, but have this 19th century thinking is to it's sort of like the women that they have molded, and they can, they want them to be judges as long as they serve that purpose, but not for too long until they get back in power. So they use their own women, but I'm thinking that this was born out of this basic fear that they have. So let's see. So that's like way underneath it. That's been the big driving force, and never underestimate the power of that to do a number. So in the past we have had Temperance in reverse, and this is like feeling off balance. And in doing readings that I've done with people that are recovering addicts and alcoholics, this is about not being sober, so to speak. That this is really being thrown off the balance, and that this figure, can't keep his hands off the bottle or the drug. And so I'm going to say that that's very interesting, because I'm going to say that a lot of times when these people are insecure that way, they've been abusing drugs and alcohol. And it's very interesting that our new Secretary of Defense does seem to like his drink a lot. And it occurs to me that a lot of the people in this cabinet do have issues. I will say this for entertainment purposes only. And you know something, when people have a problem with substances, they can be controlled in a way. I mean, they're kind of like loose cannons, but in a sense they're weak. Well, they're looked upon as being weak while they're in the throes of their addiction. They are. So I believe that people like this have been, and we have a member of the Supreme Court who I believe has a few little problems. So these people, they can be kept in line because it's sort of like, we'll feed your addiction, but you have to stay in line. So that's been kind of going on in the past. Now, in the present, we have the Page of Wands in reverse. And that is whipping, and this has been going on. So this really came to the surface during the pandemic. These preying on these insecure younger guys who who are very, very insecure about their sexuality and everything, that they are the perfect recruits. They are the Proud Boys and all that other stuff. And so they find the young and the vulnerable and the insecure. This is the incel. This is whether they're the geeky computer boys of the Muskrat, or if they are the macho Proud Boys. They all basically suffer from here. Queen of Swords. So that's how they've been recruiting the young. This is getting interesting. So this is what's been going on in the not too distant past, and now, and I would say this also represents the people that were pardoned. Get these frustrated psycho boys out of jail in case you need your own army, because maybe the real army isn't going to be really on board with your stuff. Okay, so then we have the Eight of Pentacles. So they are at the drawing board deciding how they can get rich for that, because if they don't have much sexual prowess, they're going to buy that, and that's expensive. So this is kind of how that greed for money is. That's kind of like what they figure to be the chick magnet. So they're always concerned with getting more. I mean, what does a trillionaire need with any more money? I mean, as far as the Muskrat, who is the greatest example of this, I don't care how many kids he has. To me, that's just pretty meaningless. So then we have this going on. It's the constant it's the power, and it is the money. And this is all the underneath thing of this very big fear of strong women. So going into the hopes and fears. Oh, the death card. The death card. This is very interesting. We have death in reverse over here. Okay, the death card is, I'm going to literally take this, not their death necessarily, but this whole insecure masculinity stuff, it kind of goes hand in hand with the ultimate fear of death, which is why so many of them are like these Bible thumping fake Christian types. And it's also something that has begun that inevitably has to come to an end. This is and this is what they're seeing. This is what they fear. They will dig in. Further, and but it'll be futile. It'll be futile, but they'll dig in because fantasy's got a fantasy, So I'm going to pull a card just to add a little bit more to this. So we have here, and this is why they just keep trucking along, asserting their masculinity and robbing us blind too at the same time, because it's like this whole thing with money and masculinity and power, they go hand in hand. So here we are. If I keep making, and I think this is probably what Fotis is going through now, as he's like not the healthiest person. He got to be looking at his mortality. And it kind of goes to the philosophy, as long as I keep my nose to the grindstone. Think of how I can scam more money than I can't die. I just can't die. So this goes right on top of the death card, and this is all tied in with this. And it's part of the sickness of our country. Now sometimes it just goes a little bit underground, and women assert their rights. Certainly 1919 and 1920, it kind of took a hike, but it's been building up some momentum, maybe in the past 50 years again after Roe v. Wade. Now we've got to take away the reproductive rights. So that's in the hopes and fears. So the immediate, oh boy. Anything that has to do with the present administration, the muskrat, we get our good friend, the devil. And this is very interesting. So instead of having people chained up to Mr. T, I would say, or as one of them calls him, Trumpenstein, I would say that this is their view of this is the toxic masculine thing, the hot dude getting all the chicks and all that stuff. And it's, in a way, this myth, it's the myth. And when they sell themselves to the myth, that's where all the toxicity comes. They are checking into a fairy tale that not even the hottest film star in Hollywood can claim, because a lot of them are messed up too. So this is the absolute poisonous view of masculinity that they're trying to obtain, and yet they just sell their souls. They're hooked on this, and they just sell their souls to this devil and do all kinds of horrible things to be this. Okay. Wow, it's amazing how anything that has to do with him, this comes up. This and the death card. That card is starting up right in, reverse. The death card is creeping into these readings a little bit more. Okay, so we have this. And so they're just going to hold on to that because that's how they survive. So going on into more, oh boy, okay. Lady Justice is coming in, and there are more court cases. I'm going to say that this could be the death by 1,000 court cases, because there's only so long that things can be ignored. And granted, some of this damage is done, and this whole muskrat with the little boys bullying their way into these government offices, that's another element of the toxic, that whole toxic masculine thing. But I'm going to say that Lady Justice is, I think, at least going to start to slow them in their tracks. But at the same time, the justice in the courthouse, always a woman, the blindfolded woman with the scales. And they may dig in a little bit, but I'm going to say she may be starting to win out in ways that we don't know. So it can conclude this part of the reading is perfect conclusion. The Six of Swords in reverse. What this is saying, and this is a lesson to be learned, and looking at all of these things, the basic fear of castration, insecurity, and I'll call it intellectual castration, and getting more power over their insecure selves. I mean, they're just like little boys. Is that as long as it has power in our society, can't move forward. You can't move forward in prosperity. You're going to be in choppy waters. This whole thing has made us the laughing stock of the world. I mean, it's ruining our economy. It's ruining our relationship with the rest of the world, because these little boys need to prove what big he-men bullies they are. I suspect that the Federalist Society did not exactly have this in mind, which makes me think, I mean, I would never underestimate them because I know they are learned legal scholars and all of this good stuff on one hand, but I don't think, and I think they know laws and how they're going to do this, but they don't actually know anything about human nature. And this is going to be their big failing. It's like you got to be the bully, and they're not gonna be the bullies that go back in that alley behind the bar and beat the crap out of their opponents. They think they're going to do this intellectually with the laws and with the government, and they've got their heads so much in that I mean that they just have no sense about how people are, and how there may be some lives that are going to be ruined, but they still, and if that happens, then they get ruined too. They don't have any idea of how people fight back against this, and how the suckers that you thought were on board with this, they're starting to peel off one by one. So that's why I'm thinking it's so hard to say how long this new rise of the masculine toxic is going to continue, but it can't last. Let's just hope it's months or weeks even, rather than years. So what are we going to do about it? How are we going to cope? And when we learn these lessons, how do we prevent it in the future? I'm going to say I have a strong feeling that tomorrow is the beginning of this, with people going into the streets. And I also have to say that bullies, because this is the whole bully energy, is this toxic masculinity. Unfortunately, women take it on because it's such a powerful thing. But I'm going to say that could be the beginning of really standing up to the bully, and realizing, once you realize they're insecure little boys that had maybe mommy issues, or it would mean that maybe in the case of the Federalist Society, is that years ago some woman got out of law school, got a clerk thing that they wanted, or got a judicial appointment that they wanted. So this is what the Queen of Swords intellectual castration thing is all about. And it manifests itself in different ways, in different classes of people. So let's see, coping and preventing it again in the future. So let's see where we are at right now. We've got the Ace of Swords. I think it's living in our truth. I think it's just living on our truth, seeing what it is. No more, because so much of this stuff, and this is related to codependence and alcoholism, because see, that's in the mix too, with temperance reversed. It's all of this stuff. It's like it's getting real and cutting through all the BS, and to see it when it's coming, to know what it is now, and to be able to see it when because I think that when this phase ends, it's hard to say how many years we'll live in more enlightened times, but this can always come back. It's just like racism and everything else. It's all in the same energy. So speaking of energy, okay. It's knowing that, but sometimes with a lot of things happening, sometimes we have to stop and look. And even though we know that things will hit the target, maybe not moving too fast as to show one's hand to get these people out of, the super machos out of power. again. So a lot of things happening, but maybe doing one by one by one instead of all at once in this Eight of Wands card. So have I hopefully been shuffling these up? Okay, so then, and maybe taking a look at all of these things individually, and so we really know what we're doing before we make those moves, because maybe that's why this cycle keeps recurring, is that we haven't done that, or we've only done it in a very limited sense. Okay, so let's see what we got here. Underneath all of this is the High Priestess in reverse. I'm going to say that in a sense, this is a walking and chewing gum at the same time, because we don't have a lot of time to waste. We need to clean our own houses, but we can't wait and do that to be activists and to stop this. We got to do both at the same time. This is the way it is. And this is also looking at our shadow selves and seeing what part have we played and how have we bought into all of this, because we as women and peoples that sympathize with us, we know we've been taken in by a lot of this mythology, and it's very toxic, and that's what the High Priestess in the reverse has to say. So we need to take a look at our own history while we are kind of dismantling this, because it's really gotten out of hand. I never thought we'd have reproductive. We thought that was a done deal, but Gloria Steinem told us over 50 years ago, don't get too complacent. Then we have the Page of Wand. So it is dealing, we have to be careful in how we deal with these toxic youth, and maybe bringing up the boys a little bit better. We still got to let them be boys, and if they need to, assert themselves, but to make sure that they are secure in their masculinity so they don't have to take it out on women. So this is part of this getting our own house in order. So this is a message to the younger women. Stop bringing these people up. Gotta raise them a little bit better. And to the fathers too, who need to set a good example as well. Then we have the Knight of Pentacles, which is about, he's the loyal knight. He doesn't move too fast. He's careful with his money, but he isn't hanging on too tight. He's just looking for the next place to where he can put it that'll do him the most good. I think that the guys need to learn to have a better relationship with money, and sometimes moving slower and more deliberately, and hard work, because this is the workhorse, not the galloper like the other knights have. This is the workhorse, so it's the work ethic. I think a lot of this toxic masculinity comes from, we got to get the money, we got to get it fast, and if that means we learn to be a scammer like our cult leader, no. So this is saying no. This is what the guys have got to do. Get away from that, because money is not going to make it grow any longer. That's big news flash. Okay. So we have that. And then the opposition card is the Knight of Cups. And this is the romantically entitled knight. He gets to be a little bit of a stalker who thinks he's so incredibly entitled for women's favors. And he can be, he has an unrealistic view of what love and relationships are all about. So this is the one thing we need to watch out for. And they're stalking in the bars, on the streets, and on the internet. So the power needs to be taken away from him. And I think a lot of these guys are wearing red hats. Okay. So, so conscious. Well, this is the whole thing that buying into the, men will complain. They think this is a female trait. They complain that they carry all the burden. The problem is they're not letting the women take it, and now with the DEI, they get to be more victims about how hard they have to work now and all this sort of thing. But they've gotten what they want, so that's on the conscious level. That we have to, as soon as we see them bitching about that sort of thing, that's time to really take notice. So on the subconscious level, it's they've just got to be the big heroes, and it's and light those fires and not care about the consequences and just keep moving right along, maybe from one relationship to the next. And it's that whole myth of setting the world on fire in the bedroom and in the boardroom kind of a thing that's been a driving force. So I would say to beware the workaholic and the guy that's just bragging about all the conquests that he's made, because the knights can be conquerors. So let's see, a card in the past is we have learned how to move on to smoother, we'll go out of the choppy waters onto the smoother waters. It's time to go back in the history books, which many of us were, to see like the big I would say, like in the early 70s, the big change of women gaining more power and laws that you didn't have to have your husband's signature to get a credit card and all of that. We need to go back to that history and see what was done in the past when women gained more rights, because we could go back to that. They would like us to. And I would say the thing is to it's like to celebrate the womanhood without I mean, you're going to be threatening to some men, but to say that they can share in the celebration too, because if things are better for us, things are better for them. There are always going to be those that will be threatened, but the thing is, they really need to be put in the minority. So let's see, going on right now, the Queen of Cups. So this is part of keeping our own house in order. This cannot be done through manipulation and passive-aggressive tactics, although that's very tempting. And it's getting out of being super, super needy. So it's part of keeping our own houses in order while we're doing these things at the same time. So another one in the present, we have everything is going to be revealed, everything. And it really is quite a partner with the Ace of Swords. It's like you bring everything out into the light. Everything goes out into the light, and you shine the light on that dark pillar on the High Priestess in reverse card. So, hopes and fears. The hopes is that we can reach an agreement, and it does have to be not only on the political level, on the emotional level, because that's where it goes to the political level, and to realize how much the men can benefit. And this is not a new idea. He just had a birthday. Escaped slave Frederick Douglass, once he made his way north and settled in Rochester, he did become, aside from being an abolitionist, before the Civil War was even ended, he became part of the women's suffrage movement. And he is one of the great examples of, since he was a man of color who was a slave, he really understood that he wasn't entirely free until the women are free. So he was very, very strong and gave some wonderful speeches about women's suffrage. And that's what we hope to get the men on board for that. And so and it's on a very emotional level too. But you have the sun and the moon together, so that is the masculine and the feminine. And then this is very hopeful because there can be an agreement, but I think again the fear there's always that fear of men feeling emasculated. Now some of them may be more enlightened as we are supposedly going into this more enlightened era. And I heard someone talking about the Great Awakening. I think that part of this is going to have to be a rude awakening too. Not for everybody, but I think one of the steps for there to be the Great Awakening is that some people are going to have to go through the rude awakening and realize on an emotional level that what they have been doing hasn't been working. So, looking at what's going to happen in the future, I'm going to say there's going to be a lot of regret. Well, there's a lot of regret on how the election went and people that made a big mistake in their vote. But I get a sense that as things get really strange, there will be a lot of regret and maybe realizing that when some people lose their rights, it does impact us. And that's the great example is the DEI, with the white women voting for Trump, thinking that DEI only applied to people of color who were not heterosexual, but learned the hard way that when they got fired from their jobs that they were on the front lines of DEI. Now, because women's minds have to be elevated too, so this may be the suffering a lot of them, well, they are now, so we can only hope that this will maybe enlighten them to more of the Three of Cups. Wake up to the Three of Cups. That when you get it's a big lesson, and I remember hearing this many times, is that if one group is enslaved, nobody is free. And I think that some of these women who are a big part of the toxic masculinity, because they're probably in abusive relationships and that sort of thing, that they have to wake up to this too and see the part they've played. It hasn't only been the men feeding into the toxic. So as we go a little bit further, it's about women realizing that men giving them their fortune and the luxurious life isn't all that's cracked up to be. Ask Melania Trump. I think she's a very unhappy woman. So it's that, I think more people are going to realize it, and that when you get this, if it's earned, so much the better. Now, the man can play the part as being contributor. You both contribute to this. Much more satisfaction out of that. So to conclude, this is that unfortunately, both men and women alike may have to suffer, oh God, I hope for not too much longer, may have to suffer a little bit longer and really reach some emotional bottom. It's kind of like, the alcoholic hits bottom. I'm going to say that they're going to have to, men and women are going to have to hit an emotional bottom before waking up. And I think that is a really big part of it, but not to fight it, but to allow yourself to feel those feelings so you can come out on the other side. I'm going to say with things moving, I can't believe how much destruction has been done in 3 weeks, maybe going on 4. Who's to say that all of this cannot happen just as fast? Maybe the whole thing is that the universe is speeding things up a little bit, and that maybe, maybe with a lot of the destruction that's been done in government, that's going to take some time to fix. But the attitudes to change, to know that none of that really works by subjugating these different groups, that maybe that awareness does not have to take a lifetime, and that maybe with a little bit of speeding up on that things can change. But it looks like with all these cups, it may be on the emotional level and translate into the government, but it can't happen until these attitudes, that we're made aware of these attitudes, and people that are old enough to remember maybe what their grandmothers or maybe great grandmothers said about what it was like to be a suffragette back in the day, the post World War I days, need to revisit that and see what things at the jail and all this kind of stuff that women went through in order to get their rights needs to be revisited. So at any rate, that'll be enough of that from me, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.